autonomy or inclusion. Inclusion implies the level of inclusion of party members in the process of decision-making, or how many persons have the right to make decisions. According to centralization, we explained how centralized the decision-making process is, or whether the key decisions are made in one place or the process is distributed to several levels. Now, according to Schuller model, we have four different types of parties. First are those with low level of democracy, that have a low level of autonomy and inclusiveness. Second type are democratic centralism parties with low level of autonomy and a high level of inclusion. And the third type are individualistic and elitistic types of parties that have a high level of autonomy and a low level of inclusiveness. And the fourth type are the parties which have a full democracy with a high level of autonomy and a high level of inclusion. So when we speak about these two dimensions, each of those dimensions have three sub-dimensions. Inclusion dimension relates to the horizontal aspects of political parties and implies the number of members of political parties that are included in the decision-making process, and implies and shows the differences in authorities given to party members and those responsibilities given to the narrow party circle. Then we have a vertical distribution of power dealing with the issue of autonomy of part of the parties at different levels. And as Schuller mentions, parties in the field can impact the decision-making process and different levels within the party. Now, within this dimension that you can see here on this slide, the autonomy dimension, we have three sub-dimensions, which is the right of the political party members, where we defined indicators that were monitored. These are general rights, the rights to create inter-party groups, and protection from sanctions or disciplinary measures. Then we have indicators in the decision-making process. This is the structure of local bodies, disciplinary procedures, selection procedures for local elections, and on making local coalitions, and other indicators such as the scope of responsibilities or competencies, actually, in making decisions regarding local issues, regarding the election of local government, summoning of local bodies, and decision-making at the local level, coordination of activities of parties at the local level, and also the possibility that the party officials at the state level can be members. So colleague Sam and me, we have changed the term national with a state level, which is more relevant for the structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the third sub-dimension here is the direct impact of the local authorities on the decision-making process at the state level, where the indicators are participation in the election of the representatives in the representative body of the party, then participation in the election of members of political and executive bodies of the party at the state level, then selecting candidates for parliamentary election, and impact in summoning congresses, sessions, and possibility to initiate changes of the statute. When we talk about the inclusion dimension, we also had three sub-dimensions where each of those had their indicators. So the indicator of the first subject dimension, direct participation of the party members in the decision-making process, were the direct participation in the decision-making and the elections, then direct participation in the selection process, and the direct participation of members in the initiatives at the central level, directed to the central. The second sub-dimension is the scope of competencies that representatives bodies have compared to the executive bodies of the party. So indicators here were participating at the central level at the adoption of the statutes, election of the executive bodies and the party bodies, and the local level participating in the selection of the election of the local bodies and representatives at the convention at the high level. And the third subdimension and its indicators were the competencies of the president of political parties, where we had indicators about right to propose and appoint vice president and to appoint members of the central body, and the right to suspend or to replace or to exclude a member in the selection procedure at the central level and the local level, and other prerogatives. Now we coming to something that we have observed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. These are the 6 political parties and 3 subdimensions for the autonomy dimension. We have Democratic Action Party, Croatian Party, Independent Social Democrats, and the Social Democratic Party of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So when we speak about the autonomy dimension and indicators, we can give the following analysis. When we talk about the rights of the members in these political parties that we have analyzed, we can conclude that the general rights in these 4 parties are identical and all have certain discriminatory factors, while these discriminating factors are a bit lower in SDP. And they have the higher degree of fairness towards their members in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I have a signal here, getting the signal here from Professor Cello that I have 5 more minutes left. So the next sub-dimension is the autonomy of the local level of the party, where we can see that the SDP we'll elaborate this in more details in our article after this conference, but you can see here that this party in Bosnia and Herzegovina, even in this sub-dimension, according to our analysis, is the highly ranked.
So this within the dimension of autonomy, SDP was marked 5. He got 5 grades, 5 points, and other political parties were assigned 2 points. When we talk about inclusion, we had 3 sub-dimensions where we can see that grades or points differ as against SDP from on one side and other 4 parties on the other side. This is best visible at the last chart, where SDP has a different position as against other parties. In accordance to this, unfortunately, due to the economy of time, I had to skip a lot of things, but we may say that when it comes to intra-party democracy, we analyzed parties in Bosnia and Herzegovina that were typicized. SDA is a low democracy level party, which points out to the low level of autonomy and inclusion. Croatian democratic community is also on the low level of democracy, but it's more close to the Party of Democratic Centralism as against Party of Democratic Action. SDS and SNS were parties of democratic centralism with low level of autonomy and a high level of inclusion, but close to the level of parties with low level of democracy. SDP of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as per our analysis, is at individualistic type of party with a high level of autonomy and a high level of inclusion, and they're close to the threshold of parties that demonstrate full democracy. To summarize, in addition